Here's a new acquisition, The Lost Album by Basil Hyman, subtitled A Visual History of 1950s Britain. You see the cover is somewhat unusual. These are actual pockets, but they're on the inside of the plastic. So if you peel this apart, you can take out all these materials. There's a little booklet here. This kind of sets the tone for the book, which is about, as the title says, a certain time, but it's also about photography in a sense. So let's look. If you pause this video, you can read that. I think, in HD. Somebody said you can't read it. Maybe not. I don't really know. The idea of these videos, of course, is not to replace the experience of looking at the actual book. These videos are thought of as kind of teasers for the books, so that if you like the book, you go out and buy it, or you mosey over to your nearest browser and order it. Of course, you should always support actual bookshops, assuming there are any where you live. This is just great. Oh, okay, so that was my heat coming on and then going off again. I'll just leave that in as a little extra blooper. So you see, anyway, so see there's reproductions of photographs, and there's these reproductions of ephemera, including some of them are kind of included like this. You can't take this out, but this is a reproduction of this little booklet. And that was one of the reasons why I bought this book. This is not an old X-ray machine, it's an enlarger, the MPP enlarger, and this tells you how that thing worked. Somebody used this, as you can tell, which I think is a rather charming way to bring these old ephemera back to life in this kind of context. Yeah. This is what this is about. It's about Basil getting a camera, starting to experiment with photography, so the pictures get a little better as you continue through the book. And you also see the 1950s Britain represented through the photographs and through these reproductions. I'm just going to let you look a little more before I comment on how this is done here. I think this is a rather successful way of showing the ephemera. You notice that they are not against the white background, they're against these backgrounds of different colors, which makes it easier to connect the ones that belong together. So that's a good little design trick, I guess. I'm not a designer, but I like good design when I see it. One thing that, okay, so here's another thing. In order to get more of a feel for the actual objects, some of them are laid out not just flat, they're sort of diagonally, so you really get an idea of these being actual objects. The one little setback of this book is that, I don't know, for me, I always, out of the corner of my eye, I always think that these page numbers on the white corners, that they're dog-eared pages, but they're not dog-eared. But still, Anyway, here's another example of how these ephemera, in this case some old newspapers, reproduced. So I think this all works very well, I think. Nice pairing here. Obvious but nice. Sometimes obvious is nice, but other times obvious is not so nice. In this case it was nice. And here's a fold spread. I think there's another one coming up. I might be promising too much. No, I'm not promising too much. There it is. Okay. I think here's another one. Remember the color. That's always the trick. you don't really have to remember much. The color sets the tone, and you'll remember sort of what you were looking at. I think the one thing that I would have done slightly differently is I would have shown some of the pictures not as full bleed but as actual little photographic objects, but that's just a matter of taste. So here we go into some theater with a little theater brochure reproduced. There's Elizabeth Taylor, Spencer Tracy, in case they were showing Father of the Bride. And tickets. Okay. Alright, I'm not going to be able to show you the whole book. I'm just going to show you this too. The inlay Bertram Mills Circus. Here's a band of musical chimpanzees. I suppose it's a 1950s version of a boy band. No offense to any living chimpanzees. Here's some scary clowns. There's another scary clown. I don't know what it is with the clowns. I don't really think anybody likes clowns except for, I mean, no offense to clowns. Anyway, so I'm just going to show you some more of these ephemera. You can see, even just by looking at the pages, these reproductions with the different colors here. Just going to see here is, of course, you can instantly see why I like this. Here's an old cookbook. Is there more? No, but there's a kitchen. And then here is a reproduction of a ration book. The address, Ministry of Food. This doesn't have any information, but on the next pages you see it's actually used with stamps and markings. Another part of 1950s Britain. And then here's where it gets to the, first you go to the beach, and then you go to the, what I think in England is called the naughty bits. Sexuality in the 1950s. So here's entertainment for adults, featuring this brochure from Reviewedville, a souvenir. Which doesn't really look so 1950s actually. Bubbles Ballet, you can think about what famous fashion photographer worked with bubbles. I don't know whether that's triggered, I doubt it, but that's a fun reference. And then I think there's one other, some more of these were photographer smuggled his camera, I think if I remember this correctly, into this this establishment and took some pictures. And then I think that's almost it, right at the end. This reproduction of this scary booklet with all the information about how a nuclear bomb will kill you if you're in the wrong spot. So this is it. The Lost Album of Basil Hyman. A very interesting example of a book showing old photography in the context of, I want to say, its time by reproducing many of the pamphlets and documents and all kinds of things from that time.